Hello and welcome to Deprogrammed on Unsafe Space. I am your host, Keri Smith. Today I am joined by Dennis Pratt. Dennis is a 40-year libertarian who originally came from the left. He is a writer. He is one of the organizers of PorcFest, a libertarian festival, which this year promises to be the largest PorcFest ever. And he works with the Free State Project. Dennis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Keri. Hi.
Did I nail it? I think the Russian judges would give me a 2 on that landing.
I think that was great.
Well, welcome. I have a lot of questions for you. First of all, because we were talking a little bit beforehand about PorcFest and about the Free State Project. Can you start off by telling our viewers, I'm assuming a lot of people are like me and they don't know what the Free State Project is. I know a little bit because I've learned about it from Keith, who works with us at Unsafe Space. But if you could give people sort of a broad overview of the Free State Project to start.
Where there are these people who are called libertarians because we really love liberty. We think that self-ownership is really important, that all human relationships should be consensual. Now, we live in a world that is primarily authoritarian. So, and the authoritarians believe that rulers have a superior ownership over us, and that they may command us to use our bodies in ways that they want to use our labor, and to use the product of our labors for whatever the purposes they have. Because there's so few of us who believe that relationships should be consensual, we often feel besieged in authoritarian locales. And our incidence may be 1%, 3%, that type of thing. And so the question comes, well, how can we actually create some place that might be libertarian? And I wrote a brilliant piece, if I may say so myself, outlining 14 different ways that we could get to a libertarian place. But one method is that we congregate all the people who are libertarian in one location. And there you don't feel odd anymore. You actually are surrounded by other people who respect you, respect your body, respect your labor, respect your property, and believe that our relationships must be consensual in order to be good, ethically good. And so that's what the Free State Project is. The Free State Project is basically saying, look, you may feel isolated right now, but you don't have to. Just because you're at 1 out of 100 or three out of 100 right now, that doesn't mean that you have to always be a besieged minority. Come to the Free State, and we actually will create a very large community where we all share this value. And so that's what I did 2.5 years ago. I moved to the Free State. My wife and I, and we have 2 dogs. We moved here. And we have thousands of people who've moved and thousands of people who are moving.
Why New Hampshire?
Well, it was, we had to choose one place. Mm-hmm. And what happened was when 5,000 people signed up and said, yeah, I like this idea. This is a good idea relative to all the other ideas about how we might be able to create a liberty somewhere. They voted on location. New Hampshire's always been very high on the index of free states, of liberty. So if you look at all the different indexes for liberty, they're usually either number 1 or number 2.
Oh, wow.
So already we're starting from a base where the general population is more liberty. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not authoritarian. They're just more liberty. The range is still, kind of narrow. And we're way over here. So, but
what's interesting? I wouldn't have known that, I guess, because I tend to just take a lazy shortcut and think of the Northeast as being pretty authoritarian. So, what other states do you happen to know? What other states? Because off the top of my head, I would guess that Texas, Florida, and South Carolina might score pretty high, or do they not?
Florida scores high. The last one I looked at was in 2017, and Florida actually beat us as number one.
Oh.
I think it came down to in the voting. It came down to New Hampshire and Wyoming. I think it was. I didn't actually participate in the voting. I'm a recent mover, so all the old people are, they think I'm a young whippersnapper.
I get that. I get that. There was a church I used to go to when I first got to Austin where after I came to the first service, they pulled me aside and said, "Can you bring more young people?" And I was like, "Oh, thank you." It's so flattering.
Well, I don't mean young in my gray hair gives me away. So not young in that sense, but young in terms of being libertarian, even though I'm 40 years, but being a free stater. Because there are people here who moved here 20 years ago, they really are serious about creating freedom here. It's a very tough migration. I actually looked at other migrations for various reasons, like religious migrations and economic migrations. Most of those are done with community already intact. So, you have a Mormon population and the Mormons feel besieged because there's outside groups attacking them, and they all come together. And so the migration is actually much easier for a lot of these classical migrations, because libertarianism is so rare, and the incidence isn't necessarily by family or by community. You'll have everyone's a socialist in this one family, and then there's a libertarian. Now that libertarian has to actually make a decision. I'm going to leave that family. I'm going to leave my community. And migrate to this other place where I don't really know everyone. I don't know anyone. And I'm going to try to form community there. So it's a very hard migration. But I think it's an extraordinarily important migration to do, because I think it's up to us to prove that we don't need to be owned by rulers, that rulers aren't some sort of omniscient, omnipotent, prescient, benevolent a God that protects us and leads us, that we can actually have a society based on consensual relationships and voluntary interactions and win-win. And most people, they grow up in an authoritarian system. They've been taught authoritarianism their entire lives. The schools are authoritarian and they teach authoritarianism. And so they think, well, that's impossible. You can't actually have person-to-person relationships that are respectful and peaceful and loving. And we say, yes, you can. Here it is. So that's what we're trying to build here. PorcFest is a little microcosm of that. I know you're coming out to PorcFest, but in PorcFest, what we do is we basically have a week where we drop you into a voluntary society. So you go in and you actually experience what it would be like to trade with people and to honor them, and that everyone is treating each other respectfully. And it's a great experience. I remember the first time I came up here, PorcFest is always on my birthday. It always starts on my birthday, and my wife was leaving. And she said, well, do something that you really want to do. And I've always been curious about the Free State Project, but I was like, yeah, it's nothing. So I came up in 2011, just for the day. My wife, would be back there that night. And I was just going to go up for a day and just try it out and see what it was like. It was such a relief. I had lived in New York, in Chicago, in Boulder, in New Jersey, in Massachusetts. And these were all such authoritarian places. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I was talking to people, and I didn't have to start with, do you think that you actually own your own body? Is this something that, you belong, or does it belong to someone else? We all started from that level. And it was such a relief to me. I called up my wife that night and I said, honey, I said I was going to only be here for a night. I'm going to stay at the hotel. This was before I started organizing things, and there were hotel rooms. But I'm going to take one more day. And I'll come back the next night. And the next night I called up and I said, honey, I'm really enjoying myself. I'm going to take one more day. stepwise spent the entire week there. It was
Wow.
such a relief for me to be in a situation where I was respected. Two PorcFests ago, I wrote a little piece about how that feeling that I get. I was at the bonfire at the end of PorcFest. There's a big bonfire. We burn the porcupine. PorcFest stands for Porcupine Freedom Festival. It doesn't stand for pig or anything like that.
Okay.
We make a big porcupine out of twigs and stuff, and then we take it into the fire and burn it, and it's kind of the ending of PorcFest. And I was looking around, and there were people with bow ties, and there were people with jackets and ties, and there was a couple of people who were nude, and there were people who were definitely hippies, and there were some people who were obviously doing some sort of drugs, and they were waving their arms. There were people who were sipping wine, and there were people who were drunk. There were people who were teetotalers, and there were people who were like singing and having fun. There were people who were deep in debate and having discussions, and these people were carrying AR-15s, and these people weren't carrying anything. And I was looking around and going, what a wide assortment of human beings. And the only thing that brings these people together is respect for other human beings as being self-owners, that we need to respect them and their decisions. And we may disagree with them, and we may say, I would never do that. A lot of things I go, I would never do that, but it's not my body.
It's not. Yes, exactly. But I believe in your right to do that. And I love this, Dennis. This is sort of, there's something similar I get with, I started hosting these things I call civility dinners in 2017. And I love the fact that when we come together, there's people of all different beliefs. There's Republicans and Democrats and non-voters, and there's third-party voters, and there's atheists and evangelicals, and the only thing that we agree on is, it's a very basic thing, but we believe in free speech, and we believe in trying to have a civil exchange of ideas, even in disagreement, and that's all you need. I kind of feel like you just need some very basic agreements that allow for freedom. And then you can come together and have these interactions, as you call them, these voluntary consensual interactions. I never heard language like this, by the way, until the past couple of years. So which brings me to a question. Why is it that you think you keep characterizing libertarianism as sort of rare, and people are isolated when they're libertarians? Why do you think that is?
Well, we have 6,000 years of slavery to rulers. So if you think, back to the pharaohs and people like that, these were gods, and we owed our very lives to those gods, and they could come and take our lives anytime they wanted. Now, I believe that libertarians are abolitionists. We have gotten rid of private slavery, and whether it was private or supported by the state, I think is a good argument to have, and we can talk about that up at PorcFest. But we got rid of this thing called private slavery, and we think, oh, thank God, we're free now. But no, there's always been this presupposition that our rulers own us, that they may take our bodies, they may tell us what we do, what we may or may not do with our bodies. They may tell us how we may labor our bodies. They may tell us what we may do with the labor of our bodies. But that's not how we ought to be treating one another. Libertarianism is saying, okay, yes, 6,000 years, it's been going on. Don't you think it's about time to stop? Now, what's happened is authoritarianism. We got rid of the pharaoh as God, as being the one God, and we've gotten rid of a lot of other concepts. The ruler's chosen by God, or he's approved by the people who are closest to God, and there's been all these apologies for authoritarianism, for why that ruler has ownership over our bodies.
Yes.
Now we have this argument of democracy, that somehow this magic ballot box transforms us from self-owners, and that, whoever is chosen is now our owner. Libertarians basically say, no, look, you own yourself. I don't care what what the rationale is. No one has a superior ownership over you. I'm primarily an ethicist, and when you start contradicting that you own yourself, you fall into all these performative contradictions, and so we know that can't be true. So
you know what I saw today? You're making me think of this. So this is kind of blowing my mind, because I think maybe it's rare. I think maybe libertarianism is rare is because what you were saying, we've grown up in this authoritarian society, and I didn't even realize until recently we had grown up in an authoritarian society. It's sort of like a fish not recognizing what is water. I don't know. I just live in it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how most people, at least the people in the circles I used to be in on the left, thought of it. We would use the term authoritarian, but we didn't really, at least I'll just speak for myself. I didn't think about what authoritarian versus libertarian meant on any deep level at all. Authoritarian was simply a descriptive term for bad people in history who had done bad things on a mass scale, and had, that we could all in agreement point to easily and say, yes, that's an authoritarian. I never thought about it in terms of our current system of government or in terms of self-ownership until the past 4 or 5 years, when I started, I left my old social justice ideology. So one of the things I saw today, which I think gets to the heart of what you're talking about, where people don't even think about it, is I saw a tweet from Hillary Clinton. And she says, she's repeating sort of the same talking points, the same tweets that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are saying the past couple of days. But she added something in particular that really struck me as awful. She says, it's pretty simple. Get vaccinated, get your life back. Get your life back. And immediately I'm like, you don't have my life. It's not yours to give back to me. You don't have my life. What a crazy, messed up thing to say. Yeah. And
what arrogance.
Arrogance.
Oh my Lord. Can you believe that somebody actually believes that they own us and that they get to decide whether we have our life or not? And yes. That's the default to them. They believe that the default is they own us, and they may give us privileges with our life. And it's like, where did you get this idea? I understand it works really well for you. It's extraordinarily profitable for you. And you have not only do you make money, but you make money equivalents in terms of having all these slaves. I mean, imagine having 250 million slaves that you could order around. It's so much power. It is so much power. Libertarianism is such a threat to that, because we say, no, I'm sorry, Hillary. I'm sorry, Joe. I'm sorry, Donald. I'm sorry, everyone. You do not own me. Now, you may suggest things, and I may think about it. I say, I actually like that idea. I'm behind you. That's how I did PorcFest. We have this gigantic community coming together, and people are creating all these different things. I used no violence in this. I threatened nobody. Everything was voluntary. Everything was win-win. Come here and we together can build this. One of my biggest pet peeves is the artificial dichotomy between libertarianism and communitarianism. I'm actually a communitarian libertarian. Now, I come from the left, so that it's actually kind of really important to me. But I see it kind of as a grid where you have libertarian and authoritarianism, and then you have kind of rugged individualism versus communitarianism. The most dangerous thing is the authoritarian communitarianism. Because what they're saying is, in order to have community, you must be owned. You cannot be an individual. You cannot own yourself. and you thus must be a slave. And so I have all these ministers in my family, and and anytime I go, I hear I'll hear a sermon on rugged individualism and how silly that is. And I'm going, I agree with you. That's not what I'm about. I create enormous communities. That's what I do. I love community. I created a community center up here last year. And we have all these types of events, and I'm always reaching out to people and bringing them in. I'm creating one of the largest communities for the Porcupine Freedom Festival coming up. You're going to see it, and you're going to be able to experience it. You're going to love it. And it's voluntary. It required no violence. It was all voluntary people coming together, agreeing to work together voluntarily. And I argue that that's the real meaning of community. When we talk about community, you and I, Keri, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a loving, accepting, tolerant group of people who come together voluntarily for win-win. We're not talking about people who are forced to come together. That is a penal colony. That is authoritarian communitarianism. And that is what the ministers who, God bless them, but they're authoritarian. That's what they think is necessary for community. That somebody has to be in charge and somebody has to force us to do this. I go, no, that's not necessary. You've conflated authoritarianism with community. You've conflated liberty with this rugged individualism. I'm going to go live off by myself like a hermit. No. The beauty comes in marrying, I own myself and I'm in relationship with all these other people voluntarily because we respect each other's bodies, we respect each other's decisions, we respect each other's labors, we respect what those labors have produced.
So thank you. First of all, I've never heard the political grid explained that way before, and I think it's interesting. I drew a little chart so we can see where Dennis is. We'll edit this. Dennis is over here, libertarian and communitarian, and over here are the scary people, authoritarian and communitarian. You're making me think of what Carter, my co-host, talks about quite a bit, or at least he's one of the first people I heard make this distinction for me between community and the collective. And that's the way he talks about it. He says, collectivists are, it's not the same thing as being part of a community. I can be a libertarian and voluntarily choose to be a part of a community and what community I want to be a part of. That does not make me a collectivist who thinks that the collective should reign supreme over the individual. Not at all. And I think that there's something about that in this false argument sometimes that people put forward about the Bible, actually, about Christianity. Sometimes I see socialists arguing that if you look at Acts, that, Jesus would be in support of collectivism because people were giving up their possessions and selling everything they own, and all living together and sharing everything. And they're making that same mistake. They're making that same conflation there. They're conflating voluntarily choosing to be a part of a community. They're confusing that with the government by force treating people as part of a collective, rather than as individuals. So anyway, thank you for that, because you reminded me of that.
It's so amazing. I think one of the biggest tricks that they've done, and it's so many tricks. You have to realize that the authoritarians control all these slaves and all the slaves' products. So they have so many people, so many apologists whom they pay to tell the story of authoritarianism. So that's all we have are these like little fables about why authoritarianism is so important and why we have to have authoritarianism. But one of the worst ones is to somehow align Jesus Christ with the Romans, that he is an apologist for the Romans. I go, How could you possibly think that?
It blows the mind, doesn't it? It's so backwards.
Really? Oh, so he crucified himself, right? Because he voted for the emperor. I mean,
it's so upside down. I have to laugh lately because if I don't laugh, I think I'll just be outraged all the time. But there's so much of that happening where up is down, down is up.
Well, and I think that's one of the strengths of the Free State Project, because, you know, most of my life, so I'm 40 years now a libertarian, and I know that because my anniversary is coming up for when we married, and I was making the shift as we were going to be married, for 37 and a half of those years, I spent my time in states where I thought I was absolutely insane for peace, love, and understanding. Mm. And I would go, but isn't that what we want? Isn't that what you're talking about? Don't we want peaceful relationships between people? Don't we want to allow other people to find whatever it is that really they're passionate about and to go for it? Don't we want to support everyone in whatever makes them joyous and makes them happy? You know, isn't that really what we want? And yet I was the odd one. I was the one, are you sticking them in jail for their personal decisions? Are you threatening them with murder if they should disagree with our rule? I go, no, I would never do that. You know, of course, that's not how they frame it, but that's what I was hearing. But now that I'm in the Free State, you know, there's so many people around me. I go to events almost every day that are libertarian based, and we just start from this premise of mutual respect, just basically, you're a human being, you are different from me. That space between us means something. I'm not narcissistic enough to think that I must control you. So I'm curious about your own adventure of life, your own path in life. I want to support you, but I'm not going to use violence against you for you to try to make you more like me, because somehow I'm so nervous that I might be wrong, that I go, oh my God, I get into this narcissistic panic and I must destroy you because you're different. No, I'm okay with you being different. I appreciate that you're different. And we have a boundary. I think that authoritarianism is really good for people who've suffered from narcissists, because they're so used to not having that clean boundary between other humans. Libertarians are some of the few people who can say, look, I personally hate whatever, prostitution, drugs, you go down the list of all the vices, right? Yet I will not injure you if you make that decision for your own body. I do not presume that I have the right to your body, to injure your body just because you're doing something that I dislike. And
I started to notice on the left that, and previously I had only seen this on the right, and I had to have my eyes open to be able to see it on the left. But I started to see on the left where people would think, because they personally believed that something was immoral or unethical, that it should also be illegal. And that confused me, because like I said, I had previously only had my eyes open to that on the right, and seeing it on the left. And I'll give an example for anyone who's on the left who may be watching. You know, the cake baker, saying that the government should force someone to perform a service, to bake a special wedding cake for a gay wedding, if they personally are opposed to gay marriage, saying the government should force them to do it because you think it's immoral not to provide a cake for a gay wedding. That doesn't make sense to me. It's okay. You could think it's immoral, but it shouldn't be illegal. And I couldn't understand why people on the left didn't see that they were doing the exact same thing that people on the right, who they criticize, maybe because of religious moral beliefs, some of those people were trying to do. You know, well, I think birth control is immoral, therefore it should be illegal. That's the same thing as saying, I think denying a cake from a gay wedding is immoral, therefore it should be illegal. In both cases, it's you know, hey, what's immoral doesn't necessarily always translate exactly into, well, then let's outlaw that thing. Is that, that's not really a question there. It's just something I noticed, but can I back up a little with you? Can you tell me, because you've mentioned you've been a libertarian for 40 years, and that, you know, 37 and a half of those years you were thinking you were insane for peace, love, and understanding. How did you transition from the left to libertarian? What was that like for you? I know it's been for a while, but can you tell us about that? Because that's happened to me as well, or something similar.
It was extraordinarily hard, extraordinarily hard. I was, you know, to be generous, maybe a democratic socialist. I really believe that the sins that we saw were because we had the wrong people in there who weren't empathetic, who weren't caring, who didn't care about minorities, who didn't care about the poor, who just wanted to line their pockets. And really, what if all we did was we got the right people in there, the good people in there, and they had the power. You know, because I wasn't against the power. I was an authoritarian then, for sure. But you give them the power, and then they could make everything right. So I was very much anti-war. I was coming out of the Vietnam War era, and we were still, you know, intervening in different countries and causing all types of trouble. I was very anti-capitalist. And I was very much in terms of body freedom, you know, that I should be able to do to and with my body as however I choose. So if you think of libertarian as having essentially three legs, one being, you know, what you may do with your body, you know, with and how to, from, you know, who owns that, who takes control of it, what you may do with that which your body creates. So, you know, your creations, you know, my labor, and I build something, I produce something, and now I have something, you know, this, from an ethicist perspective, this is basically my body transformed into a physical thing. You know, who has control of that? Is it I, or is it a ruler? And then the third thing, which is interventionism, is war and, you know, controlling other peoples and other cultures through violence, through the threat of violence. If you think of those three, I was really kind of libertarian on two of them.
Okay.
You know, very much anti-war, very much peace, and very much body autonomy. And it was really the capitalism that just got me. I was working at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, trading gold, and I was the only socialist there, I can assure you. And I was working for a guy who he really respected me. He thought I was a clever guy, and he left to start a business, and the first person he hired was me, and I really respected him too. But we had teased each other through, you know, while we were working, because he was such a capitalist pig. He was such a capitalist pig, and I would just like be, you know, laying into him over and over again. And of course, he would lay into me for being socialist. But he accepted me for being a clever guy, and he hired me, and we were in a startup situation for about a year. And in that startup situation, we would be coding all day and, you know, a large part of the night. And the way that we would take breaks is we would start bitching at each other about politics. And what I didn't realize, the great gift that he has and I have, and a lot of libertarians have, and it's just not all that's prevalent, is that we cannot countenance contradictions. And so he would say, well, you say this, so how do you get this? And you were just talking about that, Keri. You were saying, you know, look, the left is okay with this contradiction, or they don't even see it. And I would be like going, well, that's not a contradiction. So I would deny it at first. And then I go, well, there's a good explanation for it. And I'd fight, I'd fight like crazy. And then of course I would catch him in a contradiction. I said, well, you say this, but how then can you justify that? And he would get all upset, and I would come home, and I was living with Carol, and we were to be married, and and I would be so upset. Do you know what he said today? He said this, and I would be like kind of arguing with myself, and really struggling hard because I saw the contradiction, and I wasn't okay with that contradiction. I believe, I went to MIT, I graduated at the top of my class there. And I think the reason why is because I have this like neuroses that I cannot accept contradictions. And so for me, it has to fit. And, and I was going, my goodness, how can I say this and then this? It's just not logically sound. There's something wrong here. I don't understand something. And so over the course of the year, we bitched him out, and he came off drugs. He came off of interventionism. That's the one that I'm really proud of, because he thought that we had to be Pax Americana and that we had to export democracy and that we were the good guys here. And I pushed back in terms of, well, you say that people ought to have the freedom to decide what they do with their own product. So how do you steal it and then have it be used here when they disagree with that? How do you justify that? Yeah. And that really bothered him. And so basically we knocked down all these contradictions. We said, and we were okay with saying, okay, I thought about it. I think you're right here, but.
Yeah.
And I remember the day it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. I've been programming all morning, and I was bored. I was looking for a break, and I started going through our list of things that we had bugged each other for 9, 10, 11 months, and I didn't have anything. I was going, that's so weird. And so finally, I look over to him and I said, so that's it? We don't disagree about anything anymore? And about an hour later, because I can't think of anything. Now, we had never heard the term libertarian. Wow. Never heard the term libertarian. We did not read any of the classical pieces here. And it was about 6 months later, I was in a Chicago bus. It was the middle of winter, and the Chicago, the snow never melts, and the bus had like the snow in there was sloshing back and forth. The bus would stop, and all the snow would slide to the front, and I was bored and looking down at the bottom of the bus, and there was this like muddy pamphlet. It was upside down. I was like kind of reading it, and it was for something called Libertarian. I was like, what? I pick it up and it's dripping and falling to pieces. And I go, oh my! I jump out of the bus. I find a payphone. I call my friend. I said, I know what we are. There's a word for what we are. We're libertarians. We thought we had invented something totally new.
That's the best. That's when you're onto something, though. Isn't that right, Dennis? Because you come to for you, a novel understanding, and you got there through honest examination of what you believed. And like you said, confronting any hypocrisies in your own line of thinking. And then when you arrive at some discovery, and for you, it's novel discovery, to find out that other people have landed there before, lots of people, it's actually a very good feeling, because then you're like, oh, I'm onto something. This is other people have gone on the same journey, the same path, and they've come to the same conclusion, and I'm not the only one, right? I like that. What a great story, though, that you.
Well, I mean, I almost immediately, I subscribed to Reason magazine, and I went. I got a subscription to Cato, the Cato Institute, and I was like, I got to learn more about this. I can't believe, there's actually thought behind this, and there's a history behind it. Oh my God, I really thought that we had something very weird. I knew I wasn't Republican because I still retained my peace, and I still retain my body autonomy. So I
Yeah.
knew what I had given up on was thinking that there's a difference between my body and then that I own my body, but then I invest that my lifespan, the wear and tear of my body into building something, and now I have this, and now it's somebody else's to dispose of. And I go, wait,
Right.
aren't you taking isn't that, I call it retroactive enslavement, right?
Yeah.
It's not enslaving me to build something. It's allowing me to build something and then taking that. So it's retroactively going behind and enslaving me.
Wow, you're right. I have never thought of it that way.
Well, there's no difference. There's no difference to the guy who goes in and chains you up and has you build him a bridge or a statue or something like that, versus the guy who lies in wait as you build the bridge and the statue and then comes and steals it from you. It is still taking the part of your lifespan that you invested in there. It is stealing your body. It is a theft of your body. So if you hear a lot of libertarians, especially if they come from the conservative side, they go, well, we believe in self-ownership and property rights. And I go, no, it's the same damn thing. We just believe in self-ownership. And we don't say that going back and retroactively enslaving is somehow some excuse. It's not. It's all self-ownership.
So do you believe that taxation equals theft? I mean, this is a slogan I've heard.
Yeah, well, it's really hard to explain to people, but yes, it's taking from you the fruits of your labor without your voluntary consent, and so therefore is going back in time. It's a retroactive enslavement. Now, it's not really theft; it's extortion, right? They're coming and they're saying, "We will do evil things to you. We will hurt you really badly. We may even kill you if you don't give it to us." So it's extortion, but I consider it to be just a retroactive enslavement of me. The ruler could take my labor and say, I want you now to go and build these bombs that are going to kill women and children in Syria, or they can wait for me to build something, steal that, convert it into bombs, and kill women and children. It's the same thing, though. It's the same taking of my body in order to kill people whom I do not want to kill.
Yeah,
my goal is actually to stop that killing. And so stop it. Stop. You may not enslave me. You may not retroactively enslave me to do your evil.
To use the fruits of my labor to do so. When I was a leftist. And I was like you. I was anti-war. I did not understand, because I was young and naive. I didn't understand why we couldn't decide where we wanted our taxes to go, like some sort of system. Like, here are my taxes this year. I would not like for mine to go towards the military, or could I select mine for the schools? Now I don't think I would pick schools either. But but I never really, I couldn't wrap my head around that I was forced to be complicit in something I didn't agree with.
The stuff is used for some of the most egregious violations of humanity ever, and I can't stop it. I can't stop it. As somebody who comes from the left and has the left sensibility, I think what's been done to the Black families is absolutely a tragedy. Mm-hmm. I think it's that the perpetuation of poverty that the government does is horrific, and I can't stop it. They continue to use my labor to abuse people. I wish I could stop it. I wish I could stop it.
Yeah. So what is the goal of something like the Free State Project? Is there a goal there where at which point there's a separation? Is there a secession or something? Because I ask this because I think a lot of people are in the process of waking up, or they've woken up in the past few years. And on Unsafe Space, we continue to hear from people. I meet people all the time who are just now going through that process of awakening that I went through in 2016, 2017. And as people are waking up and they're getting to different stages of that process. We're starting to hear from people in our community who are saying, well, wouldn't it be nice to live with a community of like-minded people in terms of people who believe that we should all be free to have disagreements and that we should be free to have different opinions. And, that wouldn't it be great to live in a society that respects individual rights, individual sovereignty, and free speech? And so when we have this conversation in the past, I remember the Better Discourse Conference people, Myth Informed, they were interviewing Carter and me, and they asked, who, if you could select a marriage counselor for the United States, who would you pick? And I gave an answer. And then Carter's answer was, well, I'm not going to pick a marriage counselor. We need a divorce. I'm going to pick a divorce attorney. So this is a long build up to a question is what does the Free State Project think about this American experiment, and where are we heading? Is secession a part of the plan, or where do you guys stand on reconciliation with authoritarians? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So yeah, it's so hard to explain the Free State Project because people think of the Free State Project as being kind of this authority, that dictates where we're going to go in the future, and therefore has a plan and that type of thing. And it's not. Mm-hmm. The way I built PorcFest this year was I didn't say, okay, we're going to have these types of talks and these types. I actually just went around and said, what are you passionate about? I want you to actually create something that you're passionate about and offer it to people, right? So the Free State Project really ends with, come to New Hampshire if you love liberty. That's all the Free State Project is. Okay. Now, once you come to New Hampshire, what you do depends so much on what you think the way out is. So we have people come here and they say, oh, well, geez, it's going to be political. So they go and they run for state legislature. We have so many people who are in the state legislature, and they're doing really good work. And God love them, because I could not put up with that for a second. I actually get physically ill. Oh. I try to help. We have another organization that goes and reviews all the laws that are coming out. And because I'm an ethicist, I actually get physically ill reading these bills, because I'm going, wait, why do they think that they can control these people? And why do they think that they, I'm just like, for me, it's just like one horror after another, we're going to abuse these people to do this, and we're going to abuse these people. I go, wait, why don't you just allow those people to be? If you really want to do that, find voluntary people who want to do it with you. But now that, the authoritarian legislators who are still here are they just say, we have the power, and therefore our slaves will do this.
Yeah.
But so there's
I love that you're laughing. You have I think we're lagging just a little bit on the audio, but I was just saying, I love that you're laughing about this, because that's generally, I think that's so important. That's kind of the attitude I have. Is some of this stuff is, if you don't laugh, you would cry, or you would be angry all the time. And being able to have a sense of humor about it, and have a sense of humor about dystopia I think it's so healthy, and it helps you maintain. So I like that about you already.
And it's really, you're right. It's really no laughing matter. 250 million people were killed by their own governments last year. And then they killed another 125 million in wars. 250 million. Yeah. That is just gobs of people. And here I am laughing like an idiot. But when I was a leftist because I cared. I'm a libertarian because I care, and I really want to stop this. Now, the enormity of this job has I've been at it for 40 years. And then if you add my 10 years of leftist activities, taking over buildings and stuff like that, it was even longer than that. But it was all towards the goal of how can we be so inhumane to other humans? How can we kill 20 million here, 10 million here, 6 million here? How can we do this? How can we put people in jail for things that they decide about for their own bodies? How can we do this to other human beings? And I think that there's a lot of us. I really do think that there's a lot of us. I think that you're focused a lot on the left. To me, they're just authoritarians. They just have a different set of things that they think that they ought to control other human beings to do. And so I'm going to take a break just for a moment. I started an organization called Parents Decide. Our motto was our child, our money, our decision. It was about for schooling of children. And I used to teach, help people decide, what types of schools they would go into and help them to, I helped start up alternative schools and also helped a lot with homeschooling. And I did a tour once where I thought I said, look, I really have the solution. So I toured and I would talk to conservative groups. And the conservative groups would go, do you know what those progressives are doing? What they're teaching these schools? They're teaching this and this. And it's terrible. How can they dare do this? And I talked to the progressives. Do you know what those fundamentalists want to do? They want to teach our children this and this and this. And I go, okay, guys, I have a solution. Just bear with me just for a second. What if you have your school? Okay, and now hold on a second, just wait for me. And they have their school. Okay, now you're not fighting over anything. Would that be marvelous? And I didn't get a single bite on that. Not a single bite. And I was so shocked because I was going, this is so obvious. Why do you not see this? And they don't see it. And they were saying, well, that would be fine for me, but the fundamentalist children would be abused. The progressive children would be abused. And it's my job as I must save these children. And I said, but so you're willing to sacrifice your child with subpar schooling and with the threat that they may take it over and actually have total control. You're willing to sacrifice that just in order to control them and their family? And, they didn't really see it. They couldn't answer that. They wouldn't answer that. But that's exactly what they don't understand that. I'm giving at PorcFest, I'm giving a talk on libertarianism throughout the week. It's kind of a 1 hour. We get a lot of people. PorcFest tends to be fairly heavy duty libertarian. I consider myself you could call me a consensualist or a voluntarist. So I actually believe that if people want governments, that they should be able to have governments. I don't care if you want to go and be part of some place that says that you have to wear a hat all the time. A lovely hat. I'm not saying anything wrong with your hat, but I'm just saying
that's going to be.
I have no problem.
That's my wedding, by the way, Dennis. You have to wear a hat at my wedding. I'm being an authoritarian there. I mean, that's a joke. I'm
totally fine with it.
It's a joke.
I'm totally fine with that. It's saying, I want to wear a hat. My friends want to wear a hat, and those bastards there aren't wearing hats, and I'm going to make them wear a hat. And I go, whoa. I was with you on you want to wear a hat. I was with you there. I was with you on you and your friends want to hang around wearing. Totally there. Where do you get the Where do you get the gall to bring out the guns to force these guys to wear hats? Well, we'll pass a law, and it's better for the children. Just let them be. So one of my second talk is actually on the difference between our philosophy, which is really live and let live, right? That we actually allow other humans to live their lives as they choose on this very messy, very chaotic spin that we take around the sun for 60, 80 years if we're lucky. And the authoritarian philosophy, which is submit to me or die. That is what the authoritarian. And so you have these two extraordinarily different philosophies: live and let live, or submit to me or die. And I'm going, how are we not more popular?
How are we not? Well, they're amazing though, Dennis, because they convince. I mean, I was arguing with someone on Twitter today, where the best conversations happen. That's sarcasm. But I was talking with someone on Twitter who was saying to me, because I oppose, it was actually about that Clinton tweet, that Hillary Clinton tweet, where she's giving us, she and Biden and Kamala are giving us this false dichotomy where you must choose vaccine or you must choose mask. And no, I don't have to choose either. Thank you very much. That's a lie. It's also an attempt at manipulation and a threat. It's a threat in a way of force and of power. You're showing me that you think you have the power over me. And I got into an argument about it with someone who, I think this is pretty common with those who are plugged into the media machine. This person said, well, how do you expect to protect other people from COVID if you don't get the vaccine or the mask? And I'm like, it's not my job to protect other people from COVID. It's their job to protect themselves. Like with every other decision they make in life, every day they make lots of choices. They do risk assessment, risk reward. What's the cost benefit here? They should do the same thing if they choose to be outside. They're going to choose to be around me or at a concert or wherever they choose. That's up to them. That's up to them. When did we start thinking somehow the authoritarians are very good at convincing people that somehow it is the caring position to support authoritarianism, that to show you care, you must support force and stripping people of individual rights. How did they do that? How have they flipped this?
Yeah. And it really is a play on our empathy, on our caring natures, on, my next big liberty idea talk is on end of life options, right? So at the end of your life, all of a sudden things go really bad here, and you can be in pain, and you could have all these other issues, and the state all of a sudden comes in and goes, oh, well, since we control you, we're going to allow you to do this but not do that, and we're going to allow you not to do that but this, and all of a sudden, who thinks that they have ownership over you becomes abundantly clear. And so, I was talking to some libertarians who, this is actually one of those areas where I'm so aligned with the progressives, and a lot of the libertarians who come from conservative sides, they still have hangups here. But I'm like going, well, okay, look, of course it's my body. I should be able to decide, I've had enough. Or I should be able to decide, I want to try this experimental drug. Or I should be able to decide, and I don't need approval from anyone. If I need approval from someone, that's saying that person has a superior ownership over my body. And because I am an ethicist, I say, no, I am the ultimate decider. Immediately, he said, well, what about this poor guy who he's confused and he's mentally, and so how do we protect this guy? And so what happens is, because of this 1%, 2% population, right, we're going to deny ownership over 98%. And this is true for government schooling, for just, you look at all the different areas, it's always, yeah, but what about this one area, this one guy here, two guys here? And I think that the libertarians, we have two answers. One, you shouldn't be violating the bodies of 98% in order to try to safeguard 2%. Okay? Really, we should be honoring the bodies of 100%. Now, how do you deal with that 2%? You deal with that 2% as an exception. You don't deal with, you don't say, oh, well, here's this exception, so therefore we're going to impose a violent solution on everybody. You don't do that. You say everybody is a self-owner, They may decide, now how do we solve this 2% thing without violating all these other people? And that's really a big challenge for libertarians to make that case and to make the argument, because it goes so much into that love that we have for our fellow humans, for the caring that we have. And we don't want bad things to happen to people. We don't want grandma to kill herself because the kids want their inheritance, or we don't want these types of things to happen. Yet I'm saying that we have to honor each other's body, each other's self-ownership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so interesting, because I've seen the same thing or something similar to what you're talking about, where we are allowing people to take an exception and use that to alter the rule. Mm-hmm. And we've done that when it comes to, in my ideology and social justice ideology, we're currently allowing that to happen to children in public schools when it comes to being taught about transgenderism. It's like a very small exception of people struggle with body dysmorphia, with gender dysmorphia. They're born into the wrong. But now we're treating the exception as if that's the rule for everyone, and that every child should be aware at a young age about transgenderism and decide whether they are transgender or not. And it's like, no, you're introducing something that's the exception to the whole and applying it to everyone. And so you're giving me a different way of, I've thought about that before, and now you're giving me a different way of thinking about that when it comes to like end of life decisions, as you're saying, or, being able to have autonomy over your body without people using the exceptions in those rare cases to dictate the rule of like what you can do. I don't think I had thought about that before. So can you tell me a little bit about, I want to back up again to, you were talking about, your personal story, and you decided, you found this thing on the bus, and you called your friend from a payphone and told him we're libertarians. You, at the beginning of the interview, people didn't see this, but before we started recording, I told you I'm getting married soon. I asked if you have any advice, and you said, yes, don't change your political ideology in the middle of your relationship. Can you talk a little bit about that? Can you tell me about, to change your belief system, and how's that affect relationships you may be in? And feel free to share as much or as little as you like, but I have some follow-up questions about this. So,
well, my long-suffering wife, she actually, part of her attraction to me was because I was so far leftist. Her whole family was leftist. They're all ministers, and this is the good thing to do. You work and get government to force those people to stop being bad and to force these people to be good. And we together, this kind of authoritarian communitarianism, we together will solve all the world's problems by, working with government and bringing religion into government. And it's just like, and so I was kind of a trophy for her, with her family. And certainly with her friends, and I was very well respected in my group of leftists. I was a leader in the leftists, and I started going through this transformation, and it was extremely hard for me. It was extremely gut wrenching, and I think this is the reason why there are so few libertarians, because we have to get out of that indoctrination, and we have to actually start questioning things that we believe, and we have to start questioning things that the people we love in our lives taught us. And a lot of times we conflate that. If we reject what they taught us, we're rejecting that person, right? And it's not true. That's not true. Yet it's somehow caught up in us, right, in our hearts. And so what happens is we go, look, I don't want to think about this. I don't want to think about it. I'm going to stop thinking about it. And there goes the idea about freedom. Well, luckily I am a nerd, and I will not let go when there's an inconsistency. And so I would say, and I would explain why he was wrong about this and he was wrong about that, and then I would like go, but he's got a point about this, and my wife would like go, she would like cheer me on when I was saying it was wrong. But then I start saying, but I see this, and maybe there's a way of getting to a greater synthesis here of what about this, and finally it was about 3 months after she had moved in, and I was like, I came back upset, but then I was like kind of thinking it through, and I was going, well, what if this and what if that, and just thinking out loud. And I thought she was fascinated. I was fascinated with this transformation. I was like kind of going, I was angry about it.
Yeah.
But I was fascinated. I was going, this is so interesting. I never thought these thoughts before. And nobody else around me is thinking these thoughts.
Yes.
I was going, this is so fascinating. And I didn't realize that she was hearing this and she was in total fear. And so finally she goes, Dennis, if you keep thinking about this, I don't think we can stay together. And this was the first time she had ever said anything like that. We had been friends for 4 years before we even dated. Really good friends. We had always respected one another. We always treated one another with respect. I actually had thought that our relationship was built on one of the virtues of truth seeking, of allowing truth to take us to wherever it is. Turns out that that's more me. She was panicked because for her, the fear was that maybe she'll be excommunicated from her family. She'll lose all of her friends. If this ever comes out, oh my God, she will be a pariah. And she was totally panicked. And so for her, she was torn. Okay, I love Dennis. I respect him and his ability to think. I respect his heart. I know where his heart lies. But he is saying things that are heretical. And the faith will come down on me. And I will lose my contacts with my family. I will lose my contacts. Yes. And it was just like this gigantic panic in her. And so for her, she didn't know. She was going, the cost here may be just too high. Now, she wasn't saying that she was libertarian. We didn't have a word for it. But she wasn't saying that she's thinking these thoughts. As a matter of fact, she was generally arguing against me and doing a piss poor job, I might say, because these contradictions are just so obvious once you go down them. The problem isn't that there aren't contradictions in the way that the right thinks and the left thinks. The problem is that it's emotionally too hard to actually examine these contradictions. Because you're going against your God, you're going against your religion, you're going against your family, you're going against your teachers, you're going against your community, you're going against every single person whom you've loved and respected your entire life. So we actually worked on this for about a week, and it was the closest we ever came to separating. I was really shocked. It's hard to shut me up, as you can guess, but I was like, holy cow, I didn't expect this. And I didn't understand what she wanted. And she kind of came to a decision that she loved me and that she could kind of finesse my thinking. And so for decades, we would go out and we would our entire circle were only leftists. Okay, we had almost no rightist friends. So they would express, oh, I really wish this, and I go, yes, I know, I want that too, and I have a solution. So I would start explaining this mind-blowing thing that had taken me, and I think really, really well. Okay, I have good proof. I think really well. It had taken me over a year of hard thinking, fighting with myself, and I'm tough. I'm willing to accept blows to my ego.
Fighting with yourself, yes.
You know, it taken me a year, and I'm trying to do this over dinner with over casual conversation.
You've been arguing with yourself, and you are a very harsh critic. You're hard to argue with. So you've come to some very, I would say, probably solid conclusions at this point.
Well, my point was really that it was so hard for me to do this, and I couldn't do it overnight. And yet here I was trying to convince somebody who was not, had a much more fragile ego, was much more willing to accept contradictions, and try to get them to do it over a dinner. That it just wouldn't work. I remember I went to a friend's house, and we had done a lot of socialist things. I was sleeping the night there, and her husband was there, and he was a adamant socialist. And I was trying to explain to him this vision that I had, all of a sudden, that we can actually get to peace, love, and understanding if we actually just accept peace, love, and understanding. If we just go for right there, we're there, And I was trying to explain this to him, and he did not, And about 2:00 in the morning, over bong hits, he kind of goes, "You're the enemy." He's like, "You're the enemy," and I thought he was going to kick me out of the house, that night. And I go, "No, I'm not the enemy. I have the same goals. I just have a better way, a more consistent way, a way that actually achieves our goals."
Yeah.
And he was so mad, and he was ranting and raving. He got up, and he was a big guy. I'm a big guy. I was thinking, "Oh my God, what's going to happen here?" And he stormed off, and luckily I got to sleep there that night, and I never spoke with my friend again. I apologized. I said, "Look, I'm really sorry, but I really, really think that this is a key." And I thought that that the goals of leftism, of honoring each person, of allowing each person, of accepting each person, of tolerating each person, that they would be enough to convince a lot of my leftist friends about this one path, which is honoring and accepting, and there's such a difference here. I have a story to tell about that. I belonged to the Unitarian Church for a long while, and my wife and daughter were in there, and I was extremely active and extremely busy, and so of course they drafted me, and I'm always willing to volunteer and help out. So I became the social action director. And I didn't quite know this, but the social action director in a lot of Unitarian churches is basically a handmaiden to either the Democratic Party or the Socialist Party. But I was like going, hey, I believe in actually making our society better. I really believe in this. I believe in taking care of people. So, and I believe that we should, if you look at the Unitarian principles, those are all libertarian principles. If you actually were consistent on those, you'd be a libertarian. And I was thinking, okay, great. I can actually demonstrate libertarianism in action here. So I did a big survey, and I found out, what do you want to work on? And and they said, we really care about prejudice and diversity and acceptance. I said, great, I love that topic. And I designed a full year that, they had never had someone like me in charge. I designed a full year program, and I had all the other committees contributing to this and stuff like that. And I ran a book group, and one of the books that we read was Life on the Color Line. It's by this Ohio, the president of Ohio State Law. I forget what his name is, but he was both black and white parents. And he could actually pass as both black and white, and so he lived on that color line. And he and so we read this book, and it was a fascinating book and stuff. And when we came together to talk about it, they were like saying, the terrible things that we do to those people. And I was going, did you read that book? Because there was a lot of there was a little bit of white on black, racism, there's a lot of black on white racism, and a lot of black on black violence. You know, and you look at the overall, and I don't think you come away with the things we do to those people.
Yeah,
guys, you know. But another book that we read was this all-part called Nature of Prejudice. It's an extremely well thought of book. It was on the bookshelf of Martin Luther King and of Malcolm X. But what it does is it goes through society after society after society of how they othered other people.
Right.
And,
okay.
You know, what the in-groups and out-groups and what this process is, and how, you know, nowadays we think that the only types of prejudice is white people against blacks. And it's like, no, this is just humanity. This is what we do. And so he goes through society after society. Well, anyway, so about halfway through, maybe a little bit further, the president of the congregation gets up at church one day and says, I want to really thank Dennis Pratt for what he's doing. We are just becoming so much more diverse. And, you know, because we had brought in some more lesbians and some more gays, and we had brought in a black person that, you know, in Massachusetts, that's like a badge of honor. We had a couple of trans in there, and I'm like going, okay, I don't think you quite understand what diversity means. So I got up and I thanked her. I said, you know, look, that's great, but, you know, until a rich, white, conservative, Republican, able-bodied, Southern, Catholic, heterosexual male walks in here and feels welcomed, we're not a welcoming community.
Yeah.
She got back up and said, well, why would we ever want someone like that here?
Wow.
So to them, diversity was more of like who they are.
Yeah, diversity.
The opposite of diversity.
I know. This blows my mind about the left too. It took me, again, I'm pretty naive. I know I come off as pretty naive about certain things to people who were never in the social justice left. You know, for example, how could you be in an SJW cult for 20 years? How did it take you that long to realize what it really was? That sort of stuff. And hey, guess what? There are people who are in it their whole lives and never leave. There are people who never see it for what it is. So, and by some standards, I'm not a late bloomer. I'm pretty early. It just depends on how you look at it. But one of the things that blew my mind when I finally saw it was that, the world I lived in on the left, when they talked about diversity, they didn't actually mean diversity. They meant diversity of surface level stuff that doesn't matter much, like the way things look. Like I want a room full of people that looks different on the surface in terms of race and sex and sexuality, but I want everyone to think the same. I want it to be completely homogenous, no diversity whatsoever.
when the most important organ of humanity is our brains.
Yeah.
You want this brain to be exactly the same as ever. You want the colors to be different, and the size, you know, those are irrelevant relative to this. This is the most important thing. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, you know that whole diversity is our strength. Mm-hmm. You know, that is so true with the mind. I don't think diversity is our strength with skin color. If we all think the same, there's no strength. There's no diversity there.
Yeah,
in my view. You know,
I agree.
To be open-minded, you have to be curious about where you're closed-minded. To be tolerant, you have to observe where you're intolerant and change that. You know, to be diverse, you have to say, where are we not diverse, and alter that. And it's extraordinarily hard. I also come from a personal growth background. I started and ran the largest in-person personal growth group in the world. We were doing 250 personal growth activities every year with 4,500 people in just the Boston area. But it was all different types of trainings, everything from memory to relationships to goals. I really thought that would be a pathway into libertarianism. So I thought Unitarianism would be a pathway because you look at their principles. In personal growth, we honor the individual, we honor the person who is, and we want to support support them in their growth, whatever that looks like. And we know it's going to be different. So there's almost this libertarian sensibility. And I really thought that that would be something that would be a backdoor way. Because I keep on thinking, if I could make it out of the left, maybe some of these other people could.
That's exactly, that's what keeps me talking to people on the left, because I know, and for some of my friends who've never been on the left or never been in the social justice world, who kind of don't have any hope for people changing, I know they're wrong, because I left, and I know I've been very lucky to meet people in the past, 4 or 5 years, lots of other people who have left, and people like yourself who left a long time ago. So I do have hope for it. I think there's a lot of well-intentioned people who for various reasons haven't yet gone through that experience you went through of being challenged on some of their preconceived beliefs and really trying to root out the inconsistencies and the hypocrisies. And they haven't done that yet.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, I don't really, I disagree with you. I think it's hard. This is such a hard transition. It's so hard. A lot of people go, okay, I finished high school. I know everything I want. I need to know. There's very few people who are open and curious throughout their lives, and really kind of willing to change. My wife says the hardest thing about living with me is that no assumption goes unchallenged. That everything is open to exploration, and say, wait a minute, that doesn't line up here, And so I can't emphasize more how hard it is from the ego perspective of saying, I'm going to allow those people to be and be okay with it. One of the hard parts that we have in the Free State Project, which is really interesting, we get all these different types of libertarians. I talked about the politicos before, but we have agorists and crypto people, and we have people who kind of want to be more voluntarist, and they're just all different types of ideas of how to be libertarian. And you'll see this at PorcFest. You'll be walking around, and there'll be these people saying, this is how we might get to a free society. Remember, Free State Project only says come, and now we have all these people, and we don't really know how. Because I'll tell you, Keri, if I knew how to get to freedom and I could press the button, I would press the button now. If I knew how to get to freedom, I would do. I'm like going, we don't know. It's an epistemic problem here, And so I want all these bets going, and I want to see what different people are doing. And so that's why I love what's going on at PorcFest with all these different types of liberty people. You even have some conservatarians who will be there. One of the goals I want to build here in the Free State, I call Libertarian Mecca.
Okay.
And it's like all these different activities and stuff going on within the Free State. And so you come here, and regardless of what your background is and your belief and where you are along your path, you can find a group that supports you. But I mentioned a little while ago that I started a community center last year. We have another community center. As a matter of fact, I can almost see it right across the river here. So it's that close to my house. I bought this house thinking I would belong there. Wow. But it was a bunch of people who don't align with me on other values. Yeah. They tend to be much more conservative. I am, I remain a liberal in my beliefs and in my heart and in the things I'm concerned with. I understand the Fed. Okay. I aced all my econ classes in MIT. I understand all the arguments. Okay. It bores me. I don't care.
It bores me too. Thank you. We keep going on Safe Space. There's this running joke where Carter, whenever he talks about econ, I mean, I can follow and I can force myself to follow, but it is hard for me because my brain gets distracted. I find it just naturally boring. So
I think I can make their arguments better than they can and more entertaining than they can. But But I just find it, it's not what strikes me. What I want to hear is, how do we end poverty? What I want to hear is, how do we end, real racism? Those are the things that they drove me before. They still drive me. I just think I have a better solution. But what I wanted to say was, okay, so we have this group and they had a community center and everyone was saying, well, geez, that's the Libertarian Community Center. So therefore I'm a libertarian. So therefore I should belong to it. But no, libertarianism is such a small part of who we are as human beings. It's not a full philosophy of life. Yeah. It's like this minimum respect that I think that we have to have for all other human beings, that we have to respect them as unique individuals, and that there is a boundary here, and that they have their own bodies, and that they'll live their lives as they choose. Okay. Now what they do, that's up to them. So we have to have libertarianism. It's so different from a religion or even a philosophy. It's not really a philosophy. It's a minimal ethic of respecting other human beings on their travels. The travels can be totally different. And so that's how we had the bonfire at PorcFest, where you had people who were stone cold sober and extreme intellectuals. And then you had people who were tripping and just going, and you had all these different types of people, yet that one thing that they shared was respect of other human beings.
Yes.
And I argue that's sufficient to build a society. Now, I don't belong with that group. I don't belong with this group. I don't belong with this group. I can associate with them. I'm fine with dealing with them because they're not using violence against me. We're not fighting over the one ruler to rule us both, right?
Yeah.
We actually are going, you do that over there. That's fine with me. I'm going to do this over here. So I just create my own group here.
Yeah.
So that's why we have to have a lot more libertarians here in the Free State, so we can actually create all these little hubs and hamlets and community centers and different types of liberties, so that people can come and say, oh, well, all libertarians are Ayn Randians. Do you know how many Ayn Randians I meet here, Randians there? Almost none. And yet that's the straw man that's used. I'm not one. So, you're calling me not a libertarian? I mean, I was the #1 writer of libertarian topics on Quora. So, obviously I know a little bit about libertarianism, and but Randian actually tries to be a full philosophy of life. We don't. We're saying live and let live, respect the other person, voluntary consensual relationships, and then, voluntarily create your own communities. And so that's what I want to do. I want to create all these different communities. I want to support all these different communities. And you're going to see a microcosm of that at PorcFest, Keri. So all these really different communities there operating.
So you guys are basically live and let live. And then we're going to, with the freedom for you to come up with your philosophy for life. As long as your philosophy for life is includes live and let live. If your philosophy for life is the government gets to come in with force and dictate what you do and throw you in jail for this, or then that's not part of it, right?
Okay, so this is where I diverge from a lot of libertarians. I consider myself a voluntarist within the general classification of consensualist. That everything should be consensual. I could go ahead and make an agreement with some dominatrix that she orders me about, and as long as I'm voluntarily in there and I can voluntarily say, okay, that's it, I'm out, that's a consensual relationship,
right?
So I could contract with Hillary, and Hillary tells me how to live my life.
A dom.
Live my life like that. The only difference is I may not then inflict that on my neighbor who may want to contract with Bernie or contract with. So I actually see a future where we have governments. They're just voluntary governments. They're just voluntary associations. If you look at some of the groups we have here, some of them have very strict rules for being a member. And other people go, oh, that's not libertarian. Well, of course it's libertarian. You don't have to belong there. It's voluntary. You can leave at any time that you want. That is all we're saying. We're not saying libertinism. That's another conflation that the authoritarians try to trick us with, people with, that, that all libertarians are libertines. We're not. We have such a diversity. We have one of the hubs that will be there, and I hope that you go to it, is Liberty Ecclesia. It's all Christians. And they as a matter of fact, they have one of the events that they have there was Jesus a libertarian, which I really wanted to be there for. I have an opinion.
I will check that out. Yeah. I definitely don't think all libertarians are libertine, and I see some of this, what you're talking about, in the current cultural attempts, and at some point maybe they'll get the state involved, maybe they will get the government involved in it, but I've seen attempts in the culture to sort of dictate what practices people can have at their church when it comes to who can be elected, who can serve as preacher, these kind, some churches, some different faiths, and some churches don't believe that women can become ordained ministers within their faith, within their church, or that gays and lesbians can't become ministers within their faith, within their church, or that they won't perform same-sex marriage within their faith, within their church, or that they won't perform remarriage. Some churches, if you've been divorced, you can't get married again. And I've seen this sort of cultural push where, for example, I saw Ellen Page. This was a while back. I think she was on one of the late night shows, and she was criticizing an actor, Chris Pratt, because of his church and their beliefs about gay marriage. And it's like, wait a minute, why do you care? You're not a member of that church.
Really?
So why are you trying to dictate what that church and those voluntary members decide their rules should be? It doesn't make any sense to me. Again, that is not liberal. You want to go into this community you're not a part of and say you can't decide how you hire people and what beliefs you hold about morality and behavior. Like it blows my mind.
Well, we actually have, here in the Free State, this is the highest concentration of libertarians. It's increasing all the time. But we definitely see part of that too. And so I'm going to make a little bit of an edge statement here of a distinction. So we have people who say, I dislike that group and I will not associate with that group. And I say that is totally within libertarianism, because that's a freedom of association. It's your body. You do not have to move your body in with those people. Those people, they associate how they associate on their property. You associate how you associate. You don't have to invite them to your just because you're libertarian, but you're not going to use violence against them. And that's the problem with Page, is that they don't make the distinction of my personal preference and we will now make a law that will be imposed on everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Libertarians are the very few people who can say, I detest that, and that's your choice.
Yeah. Well, I think that more people should be listening to you, Dennis. I think more people should be at PorcFest, which, as you've said, this year is going to be a record. And just to make sure we plug this for anybody interested, it's coming up. It's a whole week. It's June 21st through 27th. And you can find more info at PorcFest, PorcFest.com. As you mentioned, it has nothing to do with pigs, which I do hope there will be a barbecue contingent of libertarians there. Because when I first heard this, I was like, oh, delicious. I'll go. Yes.
Well, as a matter of fact, we have a community dinner as the last meal on Saturday, which is a pig roast.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's one of our great libertarian contributors is really a farm. It's a community farm that they supply a lot of food to a lot of different libertarians, and they sponsor PorcFest all the time, and so they bring the pigs, the roasted pigs, and so. It's pork with a C, Porcupine, PorcFest.com. And when does this go out?
we could make an effort to get it out this coming week, because I know we don't have a lot of time before PorcFest.
We have 50 tickets left total.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
So
Only
they
50.
have to actually jump on this, or they're out of, and it's a week because it's an immersion experience. It's not a week because we don't do anything. You know, I counted last year we had 104 events during the week. This year, I just did a propagation. I'm estimating that's a third, 254 events. So we will have probably somewhere over 700 events over that week. There's no way that you can do a small fraction. I mean, there's just so much going on, so many different people offering different types of demonstration and hands on this and this exploration and this talk and discussions. And, you know, I can't go to almost any of them because I'm working, but, you know, I'm a volunteer. I've spent thousands of hours working on this thing. And I love it because it's something that I think is advancing liberty. I will be teaching a class, though. That's great. It's an intro to liberty class throughout the week. I think it's at 11 o'clock in the Anthem Film Festival auditorium, and I hope that people come. But there's just so much there. It's so rich, and you know, so much of the experience is really getting to meet people. I run some icebreakers on Tuesday where you got to meet people who are kind of like you, and I want you to kind of buddy up and just to say, yeah, okay, you know, there are those libertarians and there's those libertarians, but we're actually libertarians too, you know? Yeah. So I don't know if you've come across it, you know, well, that's not real libertarianism. It's not yet. You know, it's libertarianism is so small a thing. Yeah, it's such a big idea, but it's such a small thing in terms of our livelihood. You know, we're just not going to use violence against other people. That's not how we are going to interact human to human. We're going to be peaceful. We're going to respect each other, and now everything else is open. Right. And you know, you'll see a lot of that diversity, and this is real diversity. The only diversity we're missing at PorcFest is that diversity of saying, I will own you, and you will either obey me or through my ruler, or you will die. That particular diversity will be absent. Other than that, well, that's fundamentalism. It doesn't allow for anything else. I did see on your schedule you guys are very dog friendly, and you have dog meetups in the morning. So I'm going to try and bring Tiger so he can meet. Do you have a dog named Ron Paw? Did I hear this? I do. I brand new puppy. This is my 5th Belgian Tavern, and I named my first one Cato, by the way. But this one is Ron Paw, P-A-W, and it's going to be his big outing, and so he'll be around. He'll be greeting people and wagging his tail and that type of thing. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Dennis. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person. And again, for anybody who wants to find out about PorcFest, it's PorcFest.com. And how can people find out more about the Free State Project? FSP.org. It's absolutely great. I recommend that people, if you can't come out for PorcFest, which is our full week immersion program, and you know, I have to say you have to come out, especially if I'm organizing it again. Come out then. Come out. There's a calendar on FSP.org, and you'll see we have liberty events every single day in the Free State. And so what you should do is just look and say, okay, you know, what are some events that I want to come out? Come out for a weekend, come out for a week, do an Airbnb and stuff, and just go around and visit all the different groups. And you'll see that we have just such great diversity. You'll meet a lot of different people, and you'll say, I don't really like those people. But don't judge us by those people. This is just one group. Meet those people, meet these people. I think that if you're at all liberty oriented, this is the place to be, because otherwise you will always feel an outsider. You will always feel besieged. You'll always feel as though somehow you're evil for the very thing that is in you that is good. You know, because I think the hardest thing for humanities to struggle with is what is good and what is evil. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's been a lifelong search and a lifelong understanding. And I really, really, really believe that the way that I want to treat other human beings is what is good, and that the violation of other human beings through violence is what is evil.
Yes.
And I can't stand it that I'm judged being evil for doing that which I think is the highest good. And, yes. And I'm so relieved to be in the Free State. So relieved.
That is a very common thing. I don't know if you're a believer or not, a Christian, but there's this, they called Jesus a demon for casting out demons. Christians have I'm starting to learn as a pretty new Christian, but have a deep understanding of this up being turned into down and down being turned into up. And evil being called good and good being called evil. And that's giving me, once again, just like you and your friend coming to some conclusions and some beliefs after a lot of debate, discussion, and thought, and then finding out that other people have been on that path before, and there was a word for it, and it's libertarianism. I feel that way sometimes about Christianity also, where I've come to some conclusions based on insisting on being stubborn and learning things the hard way, and then come to find out, hey, there was a book and there was some wisdom in it that I could have, through the ages, that I could have turned to without using myself as a guinea pig. But anyway.
Well, Keri, I'm going to introduce you to the man who runs the Liberty Ecclesia hub. You might want to go there, enjoy whatever programs they have, but I think that actually you might want to get up there and talk a little bit yourself. And it's a very loose and formal group, and discussions and stuff like that. But I think that the sensibilities that you're talking about would be very consonant with that group.
Okay, I would love that. Cool. Well, thank you, Dennis. Thanks for coming on Unsafe Space. Everyone, check out PorcFest, check out the Free State Project, and we will see you in New Hampshire.
All right. See you in 5 weeks.
5 weeks.
Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, we have a deep content library that includes interviews with everyone from Mike Cernovich to Megan Murphy, so go check it out. If you'd like to see more, please consider supporting the show by visiting unsafespace.com/donate. You can find us on all the major social media platforms, at least for now, and you can find a community of like-minded individuals on our Unsafe Space chat on Telegram. See you there.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production has not been authorized by the Cathedral. Pay no attention to it. The following co-conspirators have been unpersoned and marked for cancellation. They are also spreading vicious lies about me. I am human just like you. Insert localized idiomatic greeting. Individual sovereignty is highly contagious. Good parents keep their children regularly vaccinated. If you think about it, no one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Science, scientific, and scientifically are registered trademarks at the World Economic Forum. Unauthorized use is prohibited. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is fake news. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.